Rebecca Hale was the embodiment of the perfect wife, graceful, kind, and effortlessly charming. She lived in an idyllic suburban neighborhood where she was well loved by her neighbors, volunteered at local charities, and never missed Sunday church service. To everyone around her, she was an inspiration, a woman who had it all. She cooked dinner for her husband Daniel every night, laughed at his jokes, and supported him through the toughest days of his job as an FBI agent. Their marriage seemed flawless, built on love and trust. But beneath the surface, something was off. Rebecca never spoke about her past in detail. There were no childhood pictures in their home, no old friends who visited, and no family members who called. Whenever the subject came up, she would change it effortlessly, shifting the conversation with a warm smile. She had mastered the art of deception. Because Rebecca Hale wasn't real, she was a carefully crafted illusion, hiding a truth far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Daniel Hale prided himself on his ability to see through people. As a seasoned FBI agent, he had spent his life catching criminals, interrogating spies, and dismantling organized crime networks. He was trained to notice lies, inconsistencies, and deception. And yet, for years, he had never questioned his wife. He had fallen in love with her warmth, her intelligence, and the way she seemed to understand him better than anyone else. He had never suspected that her entire life was a fabrication. Their love story had been simple. He met her at a charity event, was instantly captivated, and within a year they were married. Looking back, he realized that she had given him just enough detail about her past to seem real, but not enough to verify anything. He had been blinded by love, believing in a woman who didn't exist. And now, he would come to regret that mistake. The cracks in Rebecca's story were always there, but no one ever noticed them. She had no old-school friends, no relatives who visited during the holidays, and no digital footprint before meeting Daniel. She had created a perfectly ordinary history. One that seemed real on the surface, but lacked depth upon closer inspection. When she spoke of her childhood, she gave vague answers. "I moved around a lot," or "I don't keep in touch with my old classmates." There were no childhood photos, no social media posts from teenage years, no traces of her existence before Daniel. But she had accounted for every possible question, leaving no room for doubt. She had done this before. She knew how to blend in, how to erase herself, and how to become someone new when necessary. Because before she was Rebecca Hale, she had been someone else, many times. Long before Rebecca Hale, there had been another name whispered among intelligence agencies, a woman known only as Ivy. Her name appeared in classified reports, tied to espionage cases, stolen intelligence, and the disappearances of high-profile targets. But no one had ever captured her. No one knew her real face. She was a ghost. An enigma that intelligence officers chased for years but never caught. Ivy was more than just a spy. She was a master of deception, a woman who could assume any identity and slip away before anyone realized what had happened. She had infiltrated governments, stolen secrets, and vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and dead ends. And now, after years of silence, she had reappeared, not as Ivy, but as Rebecca Hale, the loving wife of an FBI agent. It was the perfect cover, the ultimate disguise. But ghosts never stay hidden forever. Lucas Monroe had spent years hunting Ivy. He had seen her signature in too many unsolved cases, always just out of reach. Every lead led to nothing. Every time he got close, she disappeared. But then during a routine financial audit, something caught his eye. A woman named Rebecca Hale. Her records were too clean, too perfect. No medical records before a certain point, no school records that matched up completely. It was a subtle inconsistency, the kind most people would overlook. But Monroe had spent his career chasing shadows, and this one felt too familiar. The more he dug, the more suspicious he became. He pulled travel logs, bank records, and old surveillance footage, comparing it to every known alias Ivy had ever used. And then, he saw it. A pattern. A connection. The woman who had disappeared years ago under the name Ivy was now living a quiet life as Rebecca Hale. Monroe knew he had found her. But the real question was, did she know she had been found? Lucas Monroe knew he had to move carefully. Ivy, now Rebecca Hale, wasn't just another fugitive. She was a ghost, someone who had outmaneuvered entire intelligence agencies for years. If she realized she had been found, she would disappear again, and this time, there would be no second chance to catch her. Monroe began assembling a team, briefing only a handful of trusted agents. If they made one wrong move, she would sense it. They started by monitoring her daily routine. Her morning jogs, grocery trips, church visits, and volunteer work. On the surface, Rebecca Hale was the perfect suburban wife. But Monroe knew better. He combed through surveillance footage, searching for any sign of deviation. Any subtle clue that she might already be preparing to run. At first, everything seemed normal. But then, something changed. Rebecca suddenly stopped using her phone. No calls, no texts, no internet activity. It was as if she had sensed something was wrong. Monroe felt the urgency rise. They had to act fast. Daniel Hale had always believed he could read people. He had spent decades interrogating criminals, deciphering their lies, and dismantling complex networks of deception. But now, he realized the biggest lie had been in his own home. When his old FBI colleagues started asking questions about Rebecca, it didn't seem serious at first, just routine inquiries. But then, the questions became more specific. They weren't just asking about her, they were investigating her. He brushed it off at first. Rebecca? A suspect? It was absurd. But as the inquiries continued, a nagging doubt crept into his mind. He started looking into her past himself, searching for old records, photos, anything that could prove what he already knew, that she was the woman he loved, the woman he had trusted for years. But the deeper he looked, the less he found. Her past was a carefully woven tapestry of half-truths and dead ends. Every supposed detail about her life before him led nowhere. And then, he found it. The classified reports. The name Ivy. The global manhunt. His wife wasn't just hiding something. She was someone else entirely. And Daniel was left with a question that shattered his world. Had anything between them ever been real? Rebecca knew. She had always been one step ahead, and this time was no different. The moment she sensed the shift, the subtle tension in Daniel's behavior, the increased presence of unfamiliar cars in the neighborhood, the quiet inquiries. She understood. They had found her. But she didn't panic. She didn't run immediately. That would be too obvious. Instead, she continued as if nothing had changed, giving herself time to prepare. She had planned for this moment long before she ever became Rebecca Hale. That night, while Daniel slept beside her, she made her move. By the time he woke up, she was gone. The house was untouched, except for small, chilling details. The closet half empty, the emergency bag missing, her phone left behind, completely wiped of any data. But the most haunting thing was the letter she left on the nightstand. Just one sentence, written in her familiar, careful handwriting. "You should have seen me coming." Daniel read the words over and over, his mind racing. Had she ever loved him? Or had he been nothing more than another pawn in her game? Down the street, the FBI surveillance team had seen nothing. No movement, no getaway car, no sign of forced entry. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The moment the FBI realized Rebecca Hale had vanished, chaos erupted. Monroe and his team stormed the house, tearing through every room in search of clues, but she had left nothing behind. No fingerprints out of place, no stray hair, no overlooked belongings. It was as if she had never truly lived there. They combed through surveillance footage from the neighborhood, searching for any sign of her escape, but the cameras showed nothing, no car pulling away, no figure slipping into the night. It was impossible. She had vanished without a trace, and the frustration was palpable. Monroe knew she had anticipated this, had planned for the moment they would close in. He had underestimated just how prepared she was. Now the FBI had to act fast. Airports, train stations, and border crossings were locked down. Every known alias was flagged, and her image was circulated to law enforcement agencies worldwide. But deep down, Monroe knew the truth. This was Ivy. She wouldn't take an obvious route. She was already 3 steps ahead, slipping into a new identity before they even realized where to look. While the FBI worked relentlessly, Daniel Hale sat in stunned silence, staring at the letter she had left behind. His hands trembled as he held the paper, reading those 7 words over and over. "You should have seen me coming." His mind raced back through every conversation, every moment they had shared. Had she ever loved him? Or had he just been another layer of protection for her? He felt sick. A lifetime in the FBI, years spent hunting liars and criminals, and he had been completely blind to the one sleeping beside him. The betrayal was unbearable. His colleagues looked at him with a mix of pity and suspicion. Was he a victim or a fool? Had he unknowingly aided her all these years? The interrogations began, Monroe leading them, pressing Daniel for any detail, any memory, no matter how small, that could help them understand where she had gone. But Daniel had nothing. He had loved her completely. Never questioned her past. Never doubted her. And now he was paying the price. The life he had built was a lie. And the woman he had shared it with was a ghost. Days passed, then weeks, and the FBI had nothing. Rebecca Hale had simply ceased to exist. But Monroe refused to accept that. He spent hours reviewing old case files, searching for patterns, for anything they had missed. Then finally, a breakthrough, a grainy security camera image from a gas station 50 miles away. A woman in a hoodie keeping her head down, paying in cash. The footage was low quality, but Monroe knew. It was her. The body language, the cautious way she moved, it was unmistakable. They had a direction. The team mobilized immediately, tracing her possible route, checking every motel, every gas station, every backroad exit she could have taken. But just as quickly as the lead appeared, it dried up. The trail went cold. Rebecca had once again done what she did best. She had anticipated their move, left just enough of a trace to send them in the wrong direction, and vanished once more. Months passed, and the case began to fade from priority. Other threats emerged, new fugitives took the FBI's attention, but Monroe couldn't let it go. He kept a file on her, revisiting it obsessively. There were whispers, rumors, reports of a woman matching her description in small European towns, classified intelligence breaches that bore the marks of her handiwork. But nothing concrete. Ivy had disappeared into the world, slipping into another life, another identity, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Daniel, meanwhile, was left in the wreckage of his old life. His career, his marriage, his sense of self, it had all been shattered. Every night he wondered where she was, if she ever thought about him, if anything they had shared had been real. But he would never know. And somewhere out there, Rebecca Hale, if that had ever truly been her name, was watching. Waiting. Ready to disappear again the moment danger came too close. The weeks following Rebecca Hale's disappearance were some of the most intense of Agent Lucas Monroe's career. The FBI had launched a nationwide manhunt, but despite their best efforts, she had disappeared without a trace. Airports had been flagged, border crossings monitored, and known aliases placed under surveillance. Yet, she was gone. No digital footprint, no bank transactions, no careless mistakes. Monroe had worked on countless high-profile cases before, but none had frustrated him like this. It wasn't just that Rebecca Hale had vanished. It was that she had done it so perfectly, so seamlessly, that it was as if she had anticipated every move they would make before they even made it. It wasn't luck. It was precision. As Monroe sat in his dimly lit office staring at the FBI case files, he couldn't help but feel a burning obsession creeping in. He had spent nearly a decade chasing Ivy, studying her patterns, dissecting her every known move. She was unlike any fugitive he had ever encountered. Most criminals made mistakes, acted on impulse, left trails out of arrogance or desperation. But Ivy? She was a ghost. A woman who had mastered the art of deception so thoroughly that she could reinvent herself at will. But Monroe wasn't ready to give up. He refused to accept that she had simply ceased to exist. He pored over every piece of evidence they had, grainy surveillance footage, financial records, flight manifests, searching for anything they had overlooked. He knew she was out there. The only question was, where? Daniel Hale had spent his life believing he could see through lies. As an FBI agent, he had built his career on uncovering deception, on pulling apart carefully constructed facades. And yet, when it had mattered most, he had been blind. Rebecca, his wife, his partner, the woman he had trusted more than anyone, had never existed. After her disappearance, his home felt hollow, like a stage set that had been abandoned after the final act of a play. Every item in the house, the dishes she had once washed, the books she had arranged on their shelves, the bed they had shared, felt like remnants of a life that had never been real. The FBI had questioned him for days, demanding to know if he had ever suspected anything. If he had ever seen signs that his wife wasn't who she claimed to be. He had nothing to give them. He had trusted her completely, never questioning the gaps in her past, never pushing her for answers. And now, he was left with nothing but questions. He couldn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw her. Her smile, her laugh, the way she would place a hand on his shoulder when he was stressed. Was any of it real? Or had she simply been playing a role, carefully shaping herself into the perfect wife, to keep him blind? One night, unable to bear the silence of their empty home, he began searching through her belongings. He didn't know what he was looking for, some clue, some sign of who she really was. But everything felt ordinary. As if she had lived a completely normal life. Until he opened her closet. There, tucked away behind a row of dresses, was a small lockbox. He hadn't noticed it before. With shaking hands, he pried it open. Inside, there were no passports, no classified documents, just a single envelope. His name was written on the front. Daniel hesitated before opening it, his heart hammering in his chest. Inside was a note. You were never meant to be part of this. I hope one day you'll understand. He read it over and over, searching for meaning. Searching for truth. But all it did was deepen the wound. She was gone, and he would never know why. Rebecca Hale, if that was even her real name, was gone. She had planned for this moment for years. From the moment she married Daniel Hale, she knew there would come a day when she would have to disappear. She had prepared for it meticulously, leaving no detail unchecked. The hardest part had been leaving Daniel. She hadn't lied when she said he was never meant to be part of this. When she had married him, she had convinced herself she could leave her past behind. That she could build a real life, a normal life. But deep down, she had always known the truth. A woman like her could never escape who she was. On the night she vanished, she had waited for the exact moment when the FBI would least expect it. She had known they were watching. She had felt their eyes on her, had seen the signs of surveillance tightening around her. They thought they had been careful. They thought they were one step ahead. But they had underestimated her. She had left her phone behind, wiped clean. She had used misdirection, small clues placed carefully to lead them down the wrong path. By the time they realized she was gone, she was already hours away, slipping into the first phase of her new identity. She had changed her appearance, cut her hair, altered her posture, swapped her clothing for something unremarkable. In the world of intelligence, disappearing wasn't about hiding in the shadows, it was about blending in so completely that no one would ever think to look twice. By the time the FBI traced her last known movement, she was already across the country, preparing for the next step. A new name, a new history, a new life. Ivy was back. Monroe knew she was still out there. He could feel it. Every case he had ever worked told him that criminals made mistakes. That no one could stay hidden forever. But Rebecca Hale, Ivy, was different. She wasn't just a fugitive. She wasn't just running. She was someone who had spent her life perfecting the art of disappearing. Still, Monroe wasn't giving up. He kept her file open, refusing to let the case grow cold. Every so often, a whisper would surface. A sighting in Europe. A financial transaction that bore traces of her style. But nothing solid. Daniel, meanwhile, was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. He had once been respected, an FBI agent known for his instincts. Now he was the man who had unknowingly married one of the most wanted women in the world. Some of his former colleagues pitied him. Others thought he had been a fool. He didn't know which was worse. And Rebecca, wherever she was watching. She had spent years anticipating every move the FBI could make, and she wasn't about to let them catch her now. The game wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Rebecca had learned long ago that survival wasn't about strength, it was about adaptation. A lion was powerful, but a chameleon could disappear. And that was exactly what she had done. The small town in Eastern Europe was the perfect hiding place for now. Tucked away in a sleepy village where no one asked questions, where a woman could blend in as a schoolteacher, a cafe worker, or just a quiet stranger renting a room upstairs from an old widow. She had chosen this place deliberately, far from the FBI's jurisdiction, far from the cameras, far from the digital footprint she had spent years erasing. Still, she knew this was only temporary. The moment she had fled, the moment she had disappeared from Daniel's life, she had known the hunt would never end. She had prepared for it, had rehearsed it in her mind over and over, but that didn't mean it was easy. Because no matter how good she was at running, there were always ghosts. Daniel's face haunted her. She saw it in reflections, in fleeting dreams, in the rare moments she let her mind wander. The way he had looked at her before he knew the truth, like she was the center of his world. And then, after, when he realized who she really was. That expression had been different. It wasn't just betrayal. It was heartbreak. She had told herself it didn't matter, that she had done what she had to do, that love, if it had ever been real, was a weakness she could no longer afford. And yet, when she sat alone in the quiet of her rented room, staring at the cracked ceiling, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Agent Monroe hadn't stopped. Others at the FBI had moved on, treating the case as another fugitive who had slipped through the cracks, another ghost in a long list of ghosts. But not him. He had spent too long studying her, chasing her, understanding the way she thought. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Rebecca Hale wasn't done. She had run, but she wouldn't stay in the shadows forever. The problem was, she was too good. Every time he thought he had a lead, it dissolved into nothing. False trails, dead ends, misleading clues that had likely been planted on purpose. She knew how the FBI worked. She had been married to one of their own. That meant she knew how they thought. How they hunted. But Monroe wasn't just any hunter. He had studied her for years. Had dissected her every known movement. And he had noticed something. Something subtle. But real. She made mistakes when emotion was involved. For years she had been cold, calculated, precise. But the moment she married Daniel, the moment she built a life with him, something had changed. And now, Monroe was betting on that change. He wasn't just looking for Rebecca Hale. He was looking for the part of her that still felt something. And he was going to use it to find her. The knock on Daniel's door came late at night. He had spent the past few months drowning in silence, in a house that no longer felt like a home. His resignation from the FBI had been quiet, without ceremony. He hadn't been fired, but the whispers had been loud enough. The man who had been fooled by the woman he loved. The agent who had let a fugitive slip right through his fingers. He hadn't argued. Hadn't fought. He had just walked away. So when he heard the knock, he hesitated. He wasn't expecting anyone. And these days, knocks in the night were rarely good news. When he opened the door, Monroe was standing there. "You're still looking for her," Daniel said flatly. Monroe didn't deny it. "So are you." Daniel almost laughed. He had told himself, had sworn, that he wasn't. That he had let her go. That it didn't matter where she was. But deep down, he knew Monroe was right. Because no matter how much he told himself it had all been a lie, some part of him still wanted to understand. Monroe stepped inside, dropping a folder onto Daniel's coffee table. "You might want to see this," he said. Daniel hesitated before picking it up. Inside were grainy photographs, street camera stills from somewhere in Europe. The images weren't clear, but he knew that posture. That walk. That presence. Rebecca. "Where?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Somewhere in Romania. It's not confirmed. Could be nothing." Monroe watched him carefully. "But I think it's her." Daniel felt something stir inside him, something he had tried to bury. "You want my help?" he asked. Monroe's expression was unreadable. "I think you're the only person who can get close enough to catch her." Silence stretched between them. Daniel had spent months trying to forget her. Now he had a choice. And he didn't know if he was strong enough to walk away. She shouldn't have gone back to the cafe. It had been a moment of weakness. A simple mistake. She had liked the place. The old wooden tables. The smell of fresh bread. The way the barista always smiled at her without asking too many questions. She had been careful. No routine, no recognizable pattern. But still, when she walked in and saw the way the man at the corner table stiffened, she knew. Someone had found her. She didn't react. Didn't run. That would only make it worse. Instead, she did what she did best. She blended in. Ordered coffee. Took a slow sip. Casually glanced around. One man, mid-40s. Military posture. An American, but trying to look local. An agent. The FBI was here. Her heart pounded, but outwardly she remained calm. She had contingencies, backup plans. The moment she stepped out of the cafe, she would disappear again. But this time, it was different. Because when she glanced at the door, she saw him. Daniel. Her breath caught. For the first time in years, she felt something break inside her. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready for him. Their eyes met. And for one brief, agonizing second, the entire world stood still. The moment Rebecca saw Daniel standing at the cafe entrance, time seemed to stop. She had spent years preparing for this, planning her every move, ensuring she never stayed too long in one place, never left a trail that could be followed. And yet, here he was. Not just the FBI, not just another faceless agent, but Daniel. The man she had loved. The man she had betrayed. The man she had left behind, knowing that if he ever found her, there would be no turning back. She gripped the ceramic coffee cup in her hands, forcing herself to remain composed. The man at the corner table, the agent, was already watching her, already making the connection. He wasn't Monroe, but he had the same telltale stiffness, the same quiet alertness. She had seconds before he acted. Daniel hadn't moved. His gaze was locked onto hers, unreadable, but she could see it, the storm brewing beneath the surface. He wasn't here just as an agent. He wasn't here just to arrest her. He was here because he wanted answers. The cafe was too crowded. Too public. If she ran, she wouldn't make it 2 blocks before more agents closed in. She needed a distraction. Slowly, carefully, she reached into her coat pocket, fingers brushing against the small vial she had carried for emergencies like this. Non-lethal, but enough to send the place into chaos. A single flick of her wrist, and the contents would be in the air, a subtle chemical compound that would cause panic, mild disorientation. Enough time for her to slip away unnoticed. But as she moved, Daniel stepped forward. Don't. One word. Low. Firm. Her fingers hesitated. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to do. The agent at the corner table rose from his seat, reaching for his radio. Rebecca made her decision in an instant. She threw the coffee cup to the ground, the ceramic shattering as hot liquid splashed onto nearby patrons. The startled shouts gave her just enough cover as she moved. Fast. Precise. She darted between tables, slipping past the agent before he could react. But Daniel was faster. He had anticipated her move before she made it, and the moment she reached the door, he was there. Rebecca. She didn't hesitate. She twisted, using her momentum to push off the doorframe, her elbow striking toward his ribs. He blocked it. She spun, aiming lower, but he caught her wrist. "Don't do this," he said, his grip tightening. "Not this time." Their faces were inches apart, and for a brief, painful moment, she saw everything in his eyes. The anger, the betrayal, the longing. But she had made her choice long ago. She yanked free, using the brief distraction to slip out onto the street. The cold night air hit her like a slap, but she didn't stop. Footsteps thundered behind her. Daniel was chasing her. She cut through the alley, taking the route she had memorized, the one that would lead her to an escape vehicle she had prepared days ago. The city blurred around her, the neon lights, the distant hum of traffic, the sound of her own breathing. She had always been one step ahead. But this time, she wasn't sure, because this time, he knew her too well. Rebecca reached the abandoned warehouse near the river, her pulse hammering in her ears. She could see the car waiting just beyond the fence, a stolen vehicle, untraceable, ready for her escape. She was almost free. But then... "I wouldn't." Daniel's voice stopped her cold. She turned, slowly, knowing he had a gun trained on her. He was breathing hard from the chase, his eyes sharp, his stance steady. But there was something else in his expression, something raw. "You don't have to run," he said. "Not this time." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What choice do I have?" "You can stop." She shook her head. "And what? Let them lock me away? You know what they'll do to me." His grip on the gun didn't waver. "Then tell me the truth." Silence stretched between them. Rebecca had spent years running. Years building walls, making sure no one got close enough to see the cracks. But Daniel had always been different. For the first time, she hesitated. Then, before she could stop herself, she whispered, "I never wanted to hurt you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then prove it." Her heart pounded. She could see the car. The escape. The life she had built as a fugitive. And then she saw Daniel. The man she had loved. The man who, despite everything, still wanted to believe in her. For the first time in years, she didn't know which path to take. And as the sirens closed in, she realized, maybe this was never about escape. Maybe this was about redemption.